that I find really interesting about you and your life and your experiences, and that can resonate to a lot of people here, young or old. It can help them with your experience, and you can help them get through it. And one thing is depression. You have experienced some depression in your life, and what we call blue periods. How did you handle that and those rough times in your life?
Well, one of the things that come to find out later, I didn't know at the time, was when individuals who they call us gifted and they call us gifted, uh, when we when you have a certain mind that is super duper analytical, it goes always to it eventually when you're super analyzing everything, it goes to a dark side eventually. And I would have blue periods constantly throughout my life because of that. When I was working in the ministry in New York City, I never took a salary from any church. I was what people would call a tent maker. Like Paul in the Bible, he would mend tents, and this is how he did. That's his living, and that's what I did. I was self-supporting. I worked in the business world in Manhattan. Um, I got myself into a problem out of ignorance. I worked at a real estate company doing rentals, and I said, man, I can't stand this part of it. I like the commercial line, right? And the company I was working with was called Cohen Smith Chang, and they said the owner and CEO said, commercial, we're a residential real estate company, and I said, I was pushing and pushing. He said, listen, you want to start a commercial division? That's up to you, but it's all on you. I said, great, hallelujah, great, I'm gonna do this. I didn't know anything. I didn't have MBA. I didn't have any degrees in the business area.
Mm-hmm.
So I nearly starved to death for like 6 9 months, and I was watching CNBC and studying Wall Street and then started meeting CEOs and I started learning the market, and then I had to learn how to assess uh, development plans and for because sometimes you got office buildings, developments, apartment buildings, how much per square foot, hotels, all the. I just learned the whole thing, and that's when my analytical brain again kicked in a good way, and that's how my brain is. The gift I have is that I can go into a whole new area that I don't know anything about, and all of a sudden just look at the big picture and say, you know what, this should be done this way. And people are like, man, I never saw it. Like, you're right, but you don't have a. How did you? That's the now. While I'm saying that, I'll say this to you: my blues periods and doubts. Remember all the little voices I heard, people, the relatives saying what's wrong with Alberto. That voice kept coming back for years in my mind. Uh, I could. Everyone around me said, "Wow, Alberto's really bright. He's smart. He can get into all these different areas." But I thought I was dumb. The best illustration I can give you is you heard of many examples through the years of supermodels. They make money with their face, and they're on magazine covers, and they seem to everything be going wonderful for them, but they feel ugly. I Everyone around me was telling me how smart I was, and I felt stupid, dumb. And what made it, what triggered me even more was I was on my way to becoming a multimillionaire right before the whole collapse in 2008, the whole housing crisis. I was in the middle of a deal that would have I believe it would have just started me off to amassing wealth. And right in the middle of that deal, the whole market collapsed on me. And those blue periods became worse. They started getting longer and longer, and all of a sudden, these thoughts started coming in my mind. I wonder if I took a gun and just put it in my mouth, or what would be the quickest way to just end everything? And this was constantly going through my head every day. I didn't know this, but I went from the small blue periods to depression. That sent me off in a depression. And by God's grace, I got out of it. But here's my advice to everyone on this. If you get to the point where you don't care about anything, there isn't anything that motivates you, the things that used to motivate don't motivate you anymore, and it gets to the stage where you start thinking about ending it all, and that's a constant thought. Just like the sexual abuse, you need to talk to someone. You need to get that out. The worst thing you can do is just keep it in. And just keep thinking and getting into thinking about how dark everything is. And it gets darker and darker and darker and darker and darker. Talk to somebody. You might not want it. When you're in that stage, you don't really want to talk to anybody. Mm-hmm. You don't want to see anybody. You don't want to talk to anybody. You just want to lock yourself in your room, get into your bed, and put all the curtains down. And you don't want anyone to call you. You just want to be left alone. And that is the worst thing. You need to get engaged with somebody. That's the very first step. And once you do that, you need to be honest and say, I've been having these kind of thoughts. And that is the best way to get out of it. And by God's grace, I had a good friend, Andy, was my best friend at the time. He was there for me at that time. I would tell him about some of my blue periods and things like that. And he was going through some of his things too. So we were encouraging each other. I didn't know then how much of a help he was to me, just someone I could talk to. And I was in a state of just like just, totally unmotivated. And people could see that at that time that I just didn't have any motivation or anything. I was really going down. I could put a happy face for mm-hmm. people. I could even I could laugh and make people laugh. But on the inside, I was dying. Mm. And as a matter of fact, I met Vicky at that time, and I was happy about all that. But the depression is still in there. You could be successful. You could have money. You could have everything going great. And all of a sudden, that depression hits you. And again, the worst thing you can do is just keep it in. You got to talk to somebody about it.
Mm-hmm. Now, you were discussing a little bit about how you were making some good business deals, making some good decisions, and you were approaching to being a millionaire. That's what we would consider wealthy in North America. And how did you learn to handle CEOs and business people when you're an individual yourself who has no business degree? How did you handle these folks in their profession and handle them?
Well, this is going to sound nutty to some people, but again, it's the way my brain works. I work best when in crisis situation. Mm-hmm. There are times in my life where I procrastinate, and then when things get into crisis, that's when I just seem to take off. In New York City, you can ask. I'll give you an example. I met a lot of lawyers, and most of them are terrified about working in New York because they'll kill you as far as volume. New York City is a super intense atmosphere. Everything needs to be done yesterday. Mm-hmm. And everyone is just going a million miles a second, and it's like that atmosphere. I loved it. It was like adrenaline to me. And when I remember one time talking to a CEO, I said, I know the price of property, I know the square footage, I know what you can get out, and I could present it. And all of a sudden, the next question was, well, Alberto, all those things are great, and you did a great presentation, and I just have one question for you. And I said, okay, what do you think is going to happen in the next couple of years in economically in New York City and internationally that affects the market here in New York? I said, well, I don't know how I talked my way out of that. And I was thinking in the back of my mind, I was like, this guy's got to be kidding. I'm a commercial real estate. But I didn't know then, but I found out later that most big commercial companies had a division that did assessments and that did analysis and economic analysis and all that. Remember, I started the commercial division, so I had a million hats. I was everything for the company. Okay, so now I had to think about it and watch MSNBC and study Wall Street and study the world markets and how there's going to. So I had to learn, again, no degrees. I had to just learn it quick, and I did. So if someone asked me, I think Russia and it's going to affect with China and this, there, and even today, to this very day, if you look at I have two emails. One of my emails is full of economic news and real estate and how the markets are doing. And it's just part of me. I mean, part of me says, Alberto, why don't you just shut down that email? Stop being dumb. You're not doing that. But I love it. And that really helped me and to get to understand politics a little bit. And so I understand more or less economically how things from one nation to the other, and I get news from Europe, I get news from Asia, and I try to read it as fast as I can and look over and gloss over some things, but to this day I do have a whole thing like that I can't help myself on that.
Mm-hmm. Well, now you're born in Peru, Lima, Peru, all the way to New York City. Now you would consider yourself a New Yorker at heart for sure. Why leave New York and come? What brought you to Northern Virginia?
Well, what brought me to Northern Virginia was after I got out of my depression, and it was really strange. I was like, one day I said, it was like I woke up. I was like, I'm a suicide every day. I'm depressed. I'm depressed. And I spoke to my friend Andy, and we started talking, and that finally I got out of that. And by the way, in my depression, I helped start a second church in New York City. I mean, the second church. I started one in Boston and New York City. It was a church in a upper middle class Jewish area. And
how old were you when that happened?
That was before I came to Northern Virginia.
Okay.
That right before I came that was about, I started I think it was like, what is it, 5, I think it was like 8 years ago.
Okay.
Because I came here about 5 years ago, so it was like 8 years ago. We started, what happened was, John Gibson was the founder. And I said, well, I'll come and help you start the church. And he was asking around the community for a storefront or something to start the church. And most people they go to synagogues. There's a lot of synagogues in that area. It's in Forest Hills, Queens. And everyone that was Jewish would say, you want to start a church? No, I'm not going to rent you, Because nobody wanted to say, did you rent to that person? How dare would you allow a church to be started here? And blah, 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 blah. Mm-hmm. So finally, there was a fancy apartment building. And on the bottom of most fancy apartment buildings, they have like where doctor's office and things like that. So he called the manager of this fancy apartment building, and you would think, oh, that's not gonna amount to anything there, And the guy, the director or the manager or the co-owner, I forgot who it was, but he said, "You want to start a church? Great, yeah, we need a church." So we rented a small space, believe it or not, for $4,000 a month, which is, I know, sounds crazy. For a small, but this is New York City, nice area. And when we started, half our congregation was Gentile and half was Jewish. And we sang Hebrew songs. We had kosher food because we had guests What's funny is once in a while we would have somebody come in. I remember one time I believe I got to find out he was a doctor. Doctor came in. He was looking at the door constantly, and before the service over, he ran out, and a Jewish doctor, and so that was really wonderful. To this day, when I pray, I end my prayer in Yeshua's name, Amen. Not because I'm showing off or anything. it's just the habit. It was something I constantly did over there, and sometimes I do it and people look up and like, what did you just say?
Mm-hmm.
But just in this video, we're gonna have, in this channel, we're gonna have. It's called Faith, Politics, and Life. We're gonna have a section on faith, section on politics, and then life. And I'm gonna end all the sections with prayer. So don't get thrown off if I end it in Yeshua's name. Amen. That's just custom. That's just me and who I am. So what brought me to Northern Virginia was after my depression, I woke up and I said, what do I do now in my life? I'm broke. I'm wiped out. I'm broke. My wife is about to arrive. My wife is from Romania, and she was about to arrive. We got married, and she was about to arrive. So I had a friend in Northern Virginia said, "Why don't you come here? I have a new business opportunity. We can start it together. I've already started. You can join my company, and then you can go on your own, and I'll give you a salary." And I said, "Great, fantastic. Why not?" So I moved to Northern Virginia, and I started working with this individual, and things didn't work out. Someone I know for years and years and years, and there was like a personality clash there. There was also some philosophy, some business clash. There was just, I did not see this person in the same light from a distance. We had tried to do business together. It's different when you're actually working directly and you meet in someone's office day by day by day, than from a distance. And I was under him now. He was my boss. And so that didn't really work out. And one day, I know it's going to sound crazy, but the agreement was he was supposed to let me work. And he knew my wife, Vicky, was about to arrive. And he just told me, "When you go home, I need to think about you." And he never called me back. And when Vicky arrived, I was in unemployment. And before she arrived, before all this, I said, "Oh, I have a good salary. I'm gonna go on my own." And she arrives, and I'm on unemployment, which really pays peanuts, And so we were in survival mode. Not a good way to start a marriage.
No.
And we had to get and I was overqualified for everything because my resume, working in New York, and then people say, "Oh, I'm not going to hire you because I know you're going to quit. I did the training, and you're going to quit in a couple months." So I was like, "Man, nobody wants to hire me." So I had to and we decided to be a CNA, Certified Nursing Assistants. It was a very short course, and that's what I became. And then I worked security, anything just to make money. I was in survival mode. And then eventually I started doing Uber, and I started making good money with Uber, believe it or not. I started working in DC, and I started meeting a lot of Washington people. So but that's what brought me to Northern Virginia.
Okay. So you helped start two churches.
Mm-hmm.
You were close to becoming a millionaire.
Mm-hmm.
And then you started to drive Uber. That's a lot going on there. How did you handle all that? Like, how did you keep your sanity? How did you keep your purpose in life? What kept you motivated? What kept you keep going through all that? From on the verge of being a millionaire to I'm an Uber driver now.
Well, here's the thing. When I was in New York, I was in the business world. I helped start a church. I was trying to start a Bible study for business people. And here I'm in Northern Virginia. Nothing's working out. And I'm driving Uber, and I say to the Lord, "What is going on? Okay, why did you bring me here? Why do I have to go through this with my wife? This is humiliating. I mean, I already know. Is it because my brain? Lord, there's a little voice that keeps telling me I'm stupid, but I gave it to God, and I don't hear that voice anymore. I'm already been, humbled on this. I don't have any pride in that area whatsoever. I look at my mind as somebody would look at their legs if they were running. You know what I'm saying? I don't see it. I don't. What is? Are you trying to humble me? I don't understand any of this. This doesn't make any sense. When you're in that position, all you have to do is, and this is advice for people that might be in this place, you got to know. People always ask, how do you know the will of God in your life? Should I do this or that? Very simple. This is the most basic advice, and it's very quick advice. Do the basic things you know what to do, and God will show you the things you don't know what to do. In other words, read your Bible, pray, find a good church, fundamental church to go to, sound doctrine, be faithful there. And that's it. If you're faithful in the simple things, God will manifest in the complicated things. Some people, they like, oh, I don't know, and they're not reading their Bibles, praying. God's not going to speak to you if you're not communicating, okay? So I kept communicating, and I started meeting people from Washington, and I said, you know what? I'm in Washington, D.C. now. I'm working there doing Uber. Let me analyze this situation in Washington. And I started looking at, remember, I have background in business world. I know about economics a little bit. And I started analyzing proposals and things with senators and congressmen and things they were trying to accomplish. And then I started picking up people that were working as in a senator's office, congressman's office, and I would have deep conversations with them. And I started picking up many economists I picked up. And all of a sudden I felt like God said, Alberto, I want you to write a policy paper on urban poverty. And somehow I want you to get this to the White House, And I was like, is this God or am I going nuts here? This is crazy. So now I had to tell Vicky, my wife, about this. I said, honey, I believe I'm going to write a policy paper on urban poverty, and I believe this could really help the community. She said, you're going to do what? What is this? What? And she said, are you out of your mind? and I said, honey, just trust me on this. And how long is this going to take? I don't know. I've never done anything like this, so I can't give me parameters. I can't give you parameters. She just shook her head and said, okay. Now, I hadn't written anything since college, okay? And remember, I had problems with writing and reading and writing and all those type of things. And finally, I semi-conquered that. My two phobias I had to deal with and were this constant voice of saying, you're inadequate, you're dumb, you're never going to amount to anything, you're stupid. That, by God's grace, is behind me. Mm-hmm. The second voice is my writing. It's like, you can't write. And that is something where, remember I had to teach myself grammar and all that? I didn't do a very good job of it. I had to do it on the run. So I am very shy about showing people my paper. Now, people have heard me speak and teach and do presentations in the business world or whatever. They say, man, this guy is a great writer. He's probably great. No. That is my tremendous weakness. So here I am going to be doing something where I feel very deficient. And I start to write this paper, and it looked like a 2-year-old wrote it. It was terrible, okay? Mm. And I rewrote it and added stuff. Started as a 3-pager, became a 44-page paper. And I had to analyze economic numbers in city by city. I had to look at studies from the big think tanks all over Washington. I looked at liberal, progressive think tanks from Heritage. I looked from studies from Mother Jones, which is a very progressive liberal. I looked at the whole thing and say, okay, everyone is having all these different views on how do we deal with poverty. I looked at all of it and I said, this is the way I think we should handle it. And I start off the paper with my personal experience and how this could be handled. And I said, now here's the next question. How do I know if this is any good? And I wasted my time, and because it's usually a study this big of 40-something pages, and there was even an aspect there that dealt with legal law that I had to look all the way back to Mulberry versus Madison and go through all these. It was a lot of stuff I had to study in there, and I brought some of my real estate experience in there and put it all together. My counseling experience, I've been doing counseling. I did crisis counseling. I have a master's in, by the way, I didn't mention this, but I also, besides getting my bachelor's, I got a postgraduate dual major missions pastor, which means I went a lot of years undergrad. And then I got my master's in biblical counseling at seminary in Springfield, Missouri. So I did crisis counseling in my church. I did some family counseling. I did all types of counseling. And so in my paper, I brought all these various life experiences and studies all together in the paper.
Glory!